So guys, get your pens ready. This is going to be a good one. Keith Combs, everybody.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. So yeah, Keith Combs, Bassmaster Elite Series, just down the road in Huntington, Texas. I see some familiar faces in the crowd. Good seeing y'all again, and appreciate everybody coming out. So we're going to talk about offshore fishing, which is really, for most anything I've won in my career, that's kind of the technique that I've leaned on, and it covers a wide variety of things. We're going to talk about crankbait fishing, jig fishing, you know, throwing big worms offshore, and other things too. Even shallow offshore fishing is something you don't think about a lot of times when you're in the middle of the lake, but sometimes we're not fishing deep water when we're out there. But as we go through this, I'd like to keep it really as informal as possible. It helps me a lot. You know, if you guys ask, if a question comes to mind and you know probably other people have that same question, just raise your hand and we'll stop right there and we'll start talking about it. So kind of the approach we're going to go through is break offshore fishing down into seasons. So we'll talk about you know, what we're going to do like right now in the pre-spawn kind of winter phase, and then we'll go into summertime fishing, fall time fishing, and in wintertime fishing. And after every little season, we'll talk about, you know, some of the baits and techniques a little bit more in depth. So I would consider January kind of a merge between wintertime and the pre-spawn. So because I say that because like just for example, like fished a tournament this past week at Rayburn. A lot of them smaller fish, they are moving shallow on the warmer days. They're thinking about getting in there and making a bed, but the big ones are still setting out deep. So it's wintertime, but it's still kind of a pre-spawn. Some of the things that I'm looking for when I think about pre-spawn fish is going to be deep water access. And you'll hear that a lot when you hear just about anybody talk about fishing. That's a lot of times very important. And a lot of times that's in the form of a drain. If you fish Texas, or especially grass lakes, you'll always hear guys talk about a drain. And really, I want to kind of define what that is versus a channel, because I consider both of them when I'm thinking about looking for fish offshore. Like a drain, what I consider that is just any kind of slough. Like if you look at the surroundings in this area and some of the ponds and things like that, you'll always see a slough that runs into them. That's a staging area and something that bass will gravitate towards in that pre-spawn phase. A channel is more of something when you look where there's a real just cut in, defined, winding channel. A lot of times that's more of a wintertime area, but it can also hold fish in the pre-spawn. So those are areas that fish will move through. And those are areas that I want to get in there with my electronics and scan and look at where the bait's sitting and see where the bass are positioned. A lot of times they'll get on a channel, but they'll set on one particular area, maybe a hard spot on the channel or something along those lines. And a lot of times in the pre-spawn, I'm going to use a two-pronged approach. A lot of times in the morning times, what I'm looking for is really what I find a lot of times in colder months is those fish will bite really, really good offshore first thing in the morning. And as a fisherman, I think we're kind of ingrained to think about going deep later in the day, but a lot of times that best feeding window for those staging fish when it's cold is first thing in the morning. And my thought process is, you know, when it's cold at night in the wintertime, I think fish just kind of clam up. They're not very active because the water's cold. They're probably double not as active because it's dark. So when it gets light and things wake up, that's when they bite. And that's when, like a lot of times when somebody weighs in a giant bag of fish around here in the wintertime, if you talk to them, they caught it early and they caught it fishing offshore. And I think those fish feel safe because a lot of people are, you know, when I go to a lake, a lot of times first thing in the morning, I want to get up to the bank and catch one. But that's a great time to be out there fishing a little bit deeper water. So that's something to keep in mind. But like I said, I'll use a two-pronged approach a lot of times. Start offshore. If I'm struggling out there, then I'll start going shallow and looking for those areas where those fish are coming to a little bit later in the day, because that's what I think they do a lot of times. They'll gang up on a spot, they'll feed on shad generally this time of year, first thing in the morning. As the day progresses, some of those fish start to cruise in, look for where they're gonna spawn, and they may cruise back out. You know, it may not be a spawning thing, but I think they go in there, look for an easy meal, also look for an area where they're going to set up a little bit